Hello, Collateral Gaming listeners. Chazzle Dazzle here from the Trial by Error Variety Show podcast. I just wanted to take a few seconds to invite you guys over to what we do. No, it's not video games, but we do invite really awesome and unique bands from all over the world. We dig deep into their souls and find really cool stories to tell you, and there's tons of music every week, so subscribe to us wherever you subscribe to your podcast. We look forward to having you.
Tonight, on the bonus round, we are pleased to talk about our favorite video game franchise of all time, The Legend of Zelda, in coordination with our upcoming season premiere on Majora's Mask. Zach and I took the opportunity to list our top 5 favorite Zelda items, followed by a mini review on Skyward Sword. So don't go anywhere because the show starts right now. Welcome to Collateral Gaming Bonus Round. I'm Ashley Chancellor.
And I'm Zachary Gio.
And we are podcasting straight from somewhere in South Texas and
somewhere in South Georgia.
And yes, my friends, we are a 420 friendly podcast. So whatever you have, smoke it if you've got it, my friends. Zach and I have a very special topic, something that's very near and dear to us today, right?
Amen to that, brother. I'm so excited to talk about this.
I mean, if there's one game series we love more than Metroid,
it's Zelda.
It's Zelda. So we're going to do our first, not our first. This would actually be the second Collateral Gaming Zelda-focused bonus round episode. But the first one with two of us.
Woo.
So first one with
it's my first time talking about Zelda with you, my dude.
Hell yeah, dude. And we're actually doing this kind of in preparation for our Season 3 premiere on The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. So we thought it was a perfect time to delve into Zelda. First off, we're going to start with our top 5 favorite Zelda items. Do you want to start this one off, bro?
Yeah, I can do that. Okay, so my number 5 item that just popped into my head is the Rock's Cape from the first game I got it in is Oracle of Seasons. You get it in the 7th dungeon, which is oh my god, I can't remember the name of the dungeon, but you get it after you get the Rock's Feather, which it's an upgraded version of that. And instead of the Rock's Feather, which only allows you to jump over 1 space, the Cape allows you to jump over 2. And if you have a boost with Pegasus Seeds, you can jump over 3 holes. And they brought it back in the Minish Cap, which it's just OP at that point. When you get the Rock's Cape, you can just launch yourself and fly over a great distance, and with the Pegasus boots, you can soar. I love Rock's Cape just because in the top-down Zeldas, there's not really much you can do with flight elements. I mean, of course, you can warp places, and you could play your flute or your ocarina or whatever instrument you've got to teleport somewhere, and a bird will pick you up or you'll warp. But the Rock's Cape, since Oracle of Ages and Seasons, it's not in Ages, but since Seasons was one of the first Zelda games I ever played, getting the Rock's Cape made me feel like at that point, it basically when you get to any sort of game that has upgrades or items that you can get, when you get towards the end of the game, you feel like you're almost a god at that point. You can basically go anywhere, do anything, and the Rock's Cape unlocked so many different ways of getting to places that were previously unreachable. You could leap over great distances. You could clear long lines of holes that were previously unreachable. And it's fantastic. I loved dashing with Pegasus Seeds or the Pegasus boots and just jumping. And in the Minish Cap, like I said, it's greatly expanded. And yeah, that's my number 5 item, the Rock's Cape. And it's a phenomenal item. Play these games. Oracle of Seasons and Minish Cap. If you have not touched them, do it. What about you, Ash?
Hell yeah. Well, I guess I'll add my input on the Rock's Cape as well because I like the Rock's Feather. I think that it's a great item. I love the ability to jump in the 2D Zeldas. So it's always been, I think, one of my favorites, to be honest. Just the simple novelty of jumping, and then the Rock's Cape being an upgrade to that, obviously makes it the superior item. So I never really played very far through Oracle of Seasons, but I have played quite a bit through the Minish Cap. And the Rock's Cape also shows up in Four Swords as well in Vadi's Palace. So I remember using it there too. So there's not a lot for me to say about that, but I do love the Rock's Feather. I do love being able to jump, and I like that the Rock's Cape allows you to jump even further.
Yeah, I never actually got into Four Swords Adventures, and my bad, by the way. I was so excited to hear your first item that I completely forgot that you might actually have something to say about the Rock Cape, since we have both dived into these games quite deeply.
Well, I kind of with these lists, I like the idea of us kind of both talking about, each of our choices, but I won't have much more to say than that. I think because it's not used as extensively in other games, and one of the games I haven't used it at all. Side note though, I do believe it's in Four Swords, but not Four Swords Adventures. But Four Swords is an awesome Zelda game. If you're for like multiplayer, I remember back in the day playing with my friend Steven. We used to bring our DSs to school and we'd play Four Swords together, and it was great when they released that anniversary edition. But my number 5 is actually the beetle from Skyward Sword. I love the way that this item works and feels. Certainly a lot of my items are going to on this list are, I think all of them are going to be unique items that are found in only 1 or 2 games. So I will go out and say that. Obviously, we have a lot of love for the classic items, the items that appear in every game, like the bow, the boomerang, and the bombs. But come on, it gets boring after a while. We like these new, interesting, unique items, and the beetle is certainly no exception. In fact, Skyward Sword is, I think, one of the only games that doesn't have the boomerang in it, and instead you have the beetle. And I think it actually accomplishes every facet of that. The beetle allows you to, if anyone's not aware, the beetle allows you to remotely control this flying beetle, this little technological robot beetle thing, and you can aim it using the Wii remote. And we will go on record saying that Zach and I are actually fans of the motion controls in Skyward Sword, which we will touch on later. But I did like the way that this particular item controls, because not only do you aim it where you want to go, but then you continue to control it, and you can grab items like rupees, and you can scare the fuck out of bokoblins. And
I love the element of terrifying enemies. They're just like, oh, wait, oh.
Yes, and you can cut down Deku Babas and Skulltulas with it, and I love the puzzles that involve the beetle. Not only accessing distant switches, but the cutting abilities that you use. I particularly remember in the Earth Temple, there's that one drawbridge that you bring down. And then when you upgrade the beetle in Lanayru Desert later on, you get the ability to pick up items like bombs. And so you can pick up bombs and drop them off on enemies or on statues and shit. And it's really fun. It's awesome to have that control.
Those little electric puffer fish that are in the desert sands that like swell up and shoot that ball of electricity. It's so satisfying dropping a bomb and they just die.
Fuck
immediately.
Yes. This is so satisfying.
The beetle's really awesome. I love it. And you can, of course, I think his name's Scrappy, right? The guy that upgrades your stuff in the bazaar in
that's
Skytown.
Gondo or Gonzo, something
Gonzo.
like that.
Scrapper
is the name
robot.
of the robot, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I love the fact that he can upgrade your items in that game. And of course, we'll touch more on that later, but the beetle has such unique upgrades. Like it can get an upgrade that makes it just a little bit faster and has more stamina. And then the last upgrade is it becomes the tough beetle, right? Where it just goes super far, super fast. It takes forever to run out of stamina. Usually it doesn't run out of stamina by the time you're done using it. And the beetle honestly saved me so much. Every single time I go to Skykeep, there's I think it's Din's trial, where you're going through the different tunnels of lava. And of course, we'll talk more about Skyward Sword later, but the beetle saved me because I was very low on health. And there's hearts that grow on the roots up on the ceiling, and you can grab those hearts and they really help you out.
Unless you're in hero mode.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't got to break my heart on that just yet, man. Hero mode is a whole other beast. But yeah, the Beetle's a phenomenal item. It was very, very creative. I was not expecting an item like that. I mean, I guess I should have been with the motion controls, but absolutely stellar item and extremely unique to the Zelda series. I love it.
Yeah, definitely the most creative item I think that came out of Skyward Sword, and that's why it made my list. Because what impresses me the most is creativity. And I do like the upgrades, like you said, the Hook Beetle, which adds a whole new element and a lot of puzzles that you can go through in the Linear Desert in particular. I liked the was it the Quick Beetle, and then like you said, the Tough Beetle upgrades as well, fully upgrading that, and that's another aspect of Skyward Sword that we'll talk about. But I guess we'll go ahead and move on from here. What's your number 4?
Okay, so number 4, I think this might have appeared in the Wind Waker. I'm not sure. You're gonna have to correct me on this, but the first game that I really dove into, sorry, that really utilized this very well was Twilight Princess, and this item is the bomb arrows. I love
Mm-hmm.
I love combining arrows with bombs to just launch and take enemies out from afar. I mean, of course, if you're a good shot with your arrow, you can pick someone off from a distance. But the bomb arrows, you could just like hit in the area and you'll hit them. And it's great because it's really awesome for solving puzzles. You can, if there's like a big rock in the distance and you want to blow it up to see if it'll drop rupees or hearts, or if it'll lead to a hidden passageway, you don't have to ride all the way over there. You can just take it out. It's really effective in combat. If you're struggling to contend with an enemy with just sword play, you can distance yourself and pull out your bomb arrows and just knock them out. Um, I loved how unique it was because at that point it wasn't something I'd seen in a Zelda game before. And with what you can do in that game to upgrade your quiver, because you can't really upgrade your quiver fully until you do like that Rockstar Claw Shot game in no, it's Hyrule Castle Town. Yeah, that game where you basically use the claw shots to go across the graded container and you collect all those little orbs. And when you beat it the first time, you get a bigger quiver. And then once you finish the City in the Sky and you get the double claw shots, you can go back and do it again and you get the larger quiver. And you can get so many bombs in Twilight Princess. You can hold, there's like 3 different types of bombs: the water bombs, the normal bombs.
The bomblings.
Yeah, the bomblings that just crawl over. And you can use those bombs and combine them with your arrows. I love them. They're fantastic.
I love the bomb arrows as well. That was definitely a high point for me, and I almost forgot about that. They weren't actually featured in the Wind Waker, but interestingly enough, they are featured in Link's Awakening as kind of a hidden item. If you equip both bombs and arrows at the same time, you can actually fire them together.
You're kidding me.
Yeah.
As somebody who has played the pants off of Link's Awakening, I did not. Now I'm gonna have to go back and play that. That's insane. I didn't know that was a thing. That was one of my favorite little games growing up for the Game Boy Color. And I mean, it was for the Game Boy. Sorry, don't correct me, people who are listening. I know it's for the Game Boy, but
well, DX was on the Game Boy Color, so
yeah. I mean that game was so beautiful, and I had no idea. That would probably really help in the nightmare fight, actually.
yeah. And apparently, and I just looked this up, apparently the bomb arrows were planned to appear in Link to the Past, but they ended up making their way into Link's Awakening. And then obviously they're heavily used in Twilight Princess. I like the aspect of combining items in Twilight Princess. That was really cool. When you access your item screen, and you can select, equip the bow, and then you move over to the bombs, and then you hit combine or whatever it is. You can also combine with the Hawkeye. And you can also combine, what were some of the other combinations? I can't remember.
I think it was the Hawkeye and bombs. I think that was it.
That was it? Okay. That could be it. But anyway, yeah, the bomb arrows were just a blast, literally.
Okay.
To play with. I love being able to blow up boulders from long distances. I mean, that was just phenomenal. And I like that the bomb arrows were once again included in Breath of the Wild.
Oh yeah, dude. Oh yeah, man. There's so much stuff you can do in Breath of the Wild. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, that game. I can't wait for Breath of the Wild 2. You've got me thinking. Man, I didn't use bomb arrows too much in Breath of the Wild to be. Now that I'm thinking about it, that's why I didn't really come to mind. I tried to do as many new things as I could. I didn't even remember that they were in Breath of the Wild just because I was thinking about how bombs are runes.
Yeah.
And so That's cool.
Just don't use them on Death Mountain.
Nope, never.
You instantly blow up, and you can't use them in the rain either. They're useless in the rain, same as fire arrows. And you're wasting your fire arrows if you use them on Death Mountain, because all. No, they were their own collectible item, like fire, ice, and ancient arrows. Which is one thing that was unique about Breath of the Wild, was that instead of those being like consuming magic power, they just had their own item count.
Yeah.
So, and they were more expensive, and you use them, I believe, in both the Va Meadow fights and in the Va Naboris fight. You use bomb arrows against the Divine Beast.
They're also really helpful in the final boss of the Champions Ballad, the monk. I forget.
Mose Kashia or something like that.
Yeah, they're super helpful. They're really helpful for stunning him, and you can go in and do more damage.
Well, and they're also useful against the versions of Ganon that you fight, like Windblight Ganon and Thunderblight Ganon in those respective battles.
If he's up on the wall fighting Calamity Ganon, if he's up on the wall, you just launch a bomb arrow at him, and that's it. He'll fall on the ground, and you can attack him.
But my number 4 is going to be the claw shots from Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. And I will amend this and say it's got to be the double claw shots, or really it's not nearly as cool. And I will say that the claw shots in Twilight Princess are way, way, way cooler than the ones in Skyward Sword. I was kind of disappointed about the limited functionality, but the idea of taking the hook shot, an already iconic item, okay, that is fun and cool to use, and allowing it to attach onto not only more targets, but having 2 of them, so you can zip, 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 zip between targets. And then in Twilight Princess, you can actually hang on and extend the chain and lower yourself down. And that was a really cool aspect. No, you can't. The claw shots pretty much just have their hook shot functionality, and that they do come together. Unlike in Twilight Princess, where you start out with one claw shot in the Lakebed Temple, and then you go to the City of the Sky and you get a second one. I mean, that was just badass. But then it just completely changes your world. But in Skyward Sword, you get them together. I believe the second time you go to Lanayru Desert, right?
Yeah, it's the second gift of the goddess when you complete the Silent Realm in Lanayru Desert.
Right.
I could have sworn you could adjust your height with them, because when I was going into Sky Keep, which is, by the way, yeah, we'll talk about that later. I'm going to go ahead and stop myself right there. When you're going into Sky Keep, I could have sworn I kept having to adjust my height. But, I could be wrong. I'm going to have to go back and check that out. But that's awesome. I love the claw shots. They're sickening. It kind of feels like you can move, not like Spider-Man, obviously, but it kind of has that vibe. You can attach to vines, and you can collect items. You can stun and take out enemies with them. Keys, they're done in one hit. They're just such a badass item, because they encompass so many different abilities that Link can do, and they all obviously allow you to reach previously unreachable areas. And so, yeah, the claw shots are really awesome. I love them to death, actually.
I will also add an honorable mention here, but the grappling hook from the Wind Waker has always been one of my favorite items. And I don't know why. It's kind of a simple item, but it was just so cool. I remember that, that's the first major item you get from a dungeon, and you twirl around and you swing across, kind of similar to the whip functionality later. And the whip also almost made it into my list. But I did like the grappling hook. But when I was starting to think of items like the hook shot and the grappling hook and the claw shot obviously just came out on top, just because of how much functionality is there, especially in Twilight Princess.
Yeah, most definitely. I can definitely agree with that.
Yeah, and you can actually also charge them in Twilight Princess. That was something they removed from Skyward Sword. You can't hold down the button to launch them when you want. They just shoot out as soon as you hit it, which is kind of weird, because even the original hook shot could do that.
Yeah.
Or at least the hook shot in Ocarina.
I guess in Skyward Sword, they were trying to say, be accurate, because it's going to launch whether you want it to or not.
Yeah, and I do think that it was put to not as good use in Skyward Sword, because in Twilight Princess, the claw shot was cool because the hook shot could only hook onto certain targets and wooden objects, whereas the claw shot could hook onto claw shot targets. It could hook onto vines, and it could hook onto mesh type, like fenced area. You know what I'm talking about?
So I guess that's one way they did it better in Skyward Sword. They kind of gave you more options with stuff you could latch onto.
No, in Skyward Sword, it's just the targets. Yeah, in Skyward Sword, it's just the targets and the vines, I think.
There's mesh too. Yeah.
Is there? Okay.
Yes, there is. Most definitely.
And you remember that one mini game in Twilight Princess that uses the claw shots, and you can't really win at it until you actually get both of them.
Yeah, that's yeah, I think we were talking about I was talking about this just a little bit earlier. It's the game in Castletown where you can go to upgrade your quiver. And the first time you have to have the one claw shot, but you can't, and you get the upgraded quiver. And the second time you have to have both of them, and that's when you can collect them all and you can get the best quiver in the game. So they just unlock so many opportunities, and I like how they separated one claw shot from two claw shots. It kind of gave you something to look forward to. Because I knew with this newer Zelda, I was like, okay, they gave us one, maybe they could give us two, and they did. And even though Castle in the Sky, or City in the Sky, sorry, this is in a Studio Ghibli movie, but even though City in the Sky is probably one of my least favorite dungeons in the entire series, I love the fact that they gave us a second claw shot, and the mini boss fight to get them was pretty awesome. That flying lizard with the shield, and you had to wait for him to pause so that you could pull him down with your single claw shot and then attack him with your sword. And it was just really cool because it was one of the very few bosses in the game where the enemy actually manipulated you and like did different attacks to throw you off, as opposed to the like 3 and done.
Yeah.
So
the what was it? It was Eralthos, right?
Yeah, Eralthos.
Yeah, I actually love the City in the Sky. It's one of my more favorite dungeons because I just love the atmosphere. I love the fact that it's not a conventional dungeon like a lot of dungeons in Twilight Princess, but just kind of this like City in the Sky. And I love the music and the boss fight against Arkarok using the double claw shots. It's awesome.
The boss fight was incredible. I will say that, but I didn't really like it too much because I don't like it when dungeons feel particularly linear. And I like it to where when you can actually go back, and there was only really one central area that actually didn't have the floor, and that's where the claw shots were the most prominent because there was targets all over the walls, and there was moving rocks and pillars, and listeners know exactly, I think you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But that was really the only room besides the main room in the beginning of the dungeon that you actually went back to. I'm not a huge fan of linear dungeons. I like when you can't get to a certain area of a dungeon, so you have to come back. And also with how well the dungeons in Twilight Princess were, the City in the Sky kind of felt like a letdown to me, you know?
There were so many good dungeons in Twilight Princess.
Yes,
I loved what is it? I talked about this in my top 5 favorite dungeons, but I loved the Temple of Time. That made my list. And also I think I probably would replace it now actually with now in retrospect the Snow Peak Ruins, because that's just such a cool dungeon. Again, completely unconventional. You don't realize you're in a dungeon until you're like halfway through, but it starts out as like a house, and then you get the fucking ball and chain. Another item that potentially could have made my list here. It was it was definitely in my mind.
It almost made my list too, but with as little as you use it, I just couldn't justify it. It's kind of like the spinner. The spinner also almost made my list, but with how little you actually use it, I honestly hope that they kind of bring the spinner back in Breath of the Wild 2 in some form or capacity, or even the ball and chain, and you just have more use for it, you know?
That would be cool.
Snow Peak Ruins is fantastic just because of the music, the atmosphere, the puzzles, the nasty stew that eventually gets better because of all the wrong places you're sent to. It's so frustrating, but it's so good at the same time.
I love that. And Blizzetta was a good boss fight too, yeah.
Yes, it was. And she looks into the mirror and then she just turns into this queen of evil. It's amazing. You have to watch the reflection in the floor, but yeah, we're kind of going off on a tangent.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, so number 3. That's
number
where we're
3.
At? Okay, so for me, number 3 is the Wind Waker itself.
Hey.
I absolutely love the Wind Waker. It was it's the first item in a Zelda game that primarily focuses on the instrument, and I think they got the idea for the harp and Skyward Sword from the Wind Waker, that item being your main item, because in the beginning of the game you have to use it to basically solve a bunch of puzzles in which with each tune you learn you have to use it to unless you're playing the HD version and you get the swift sail, you use it to change the direction of the wind so that you can sail across the great sea. And you use it with the command melody to control Mocker, and what's the girl's name?
Medley.
Medley and Mocker. You use it to control them in their dungeons, the Earth and the Wind Temple. And I'm a musician, so I absolutely love the way they implemented that in the game. It made my heart happy every time I had to pull it out. And yes, it did get annoying having to continue to change the direction of the wind.
Or continually switch places in the command melody.
Yep. But I love it so much. It's such a unique and iconic item. And it's literally the title of the game. And when I was thinking about this list, I was like, I have to include it. It's such a good item, and you use it beautifully.
Are you choking up there?
A little bit, a little bit. I was trying to fight back a hiccup, but you know.
It's not like you're like it's beautiful.
Oh man.
Yeah, I guess that should have come as no surprise to me, since you're a music major. I should have known that that music, one of the musical instruments, would have been one of your items, which I don't think I really thought about them, because the Wind Waker would have been a strong contender for me too. And I think out of the musical items, it's definitely the best by far.
I almost put the Goddess Harp as the item, but one thing I don't like about Zelda is I wish that when you got an item, there was some way you could like train with it. Yes, I get it. It's for the flow of the game that Link already knows how to expertly use it. But the harp is ridiculous. The harp, you can just when you play it just freely running around an area, Link is automatically playing in key with the music that's that's playing in the whatever overworld theme. Like
I don't know, the harp was a disappointment for me. I was going to mention that. I was going to say, yeah, the harp is definitely not the best one, because you can't even play songs on it. You can only play in certain areas, and it's the same thing. There's no variety. You're just strumming back and forth, and Link automatically plays the song that you need to. So out of the musical instrument items, not as cool as the other ones. It was kind of a letdown.
Are so horrible, dude. The cutscenes where you're learning the song of the hero and Fi is just singing, and it's terrible. I don't.
The songs were good though, and playing the harp during those moments was fun. And I like that one area where you use it with Kina singing in the Lumpy Pumpkin is fun, but hard, really hard.
La 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 la.
But I'm going to have to agree with you that Wind Waker is, I think, the best of the musical items for sure. The ocarina is iconic, don't get me wrong, but the Wind Waker added the aspect of not only having to play the right notes, but having to keep time. And that was really nice. And I remember playing it for the first time, and I had a really difficult time learning the Wind Waker the first time I trained with it, until I learned the trick of not hitting the C stick as soon as it hits up, but holding the C stick and switching as soon as it passes the metronome.
Oh yeah, man. They in the original version of the Wind Waker, that was extremely buggy. Sometimes they fixed it in the Wind Waker HD. You could like click the C stick, and I tried to get really good at it, but it's really hard. But so yeah, holding it is the way to go.
Yeah, and also it's it was just once you mastered it, it was just so you felt like a master of music. It was really nice, and you were keeping time, and you had to hold down to the left or to the right for 4/4 or for 6/4 time, and I think they made great use out of the songs, better than the ocarina did, because there were puzzles that required you. I mean, like you said, even just sailing your ship required the Wind's Requiem. Using the command melody was honestly one of the coolest aspects and of puzzle solving in a Zelda game. I think the Wind Waker probably should have made my list now that I think about it, but oh well, we still get to talk about it. So I will say the only ocarina use that really comes close to it is the Elegy of Emptiness. But it's just so frustrating because you have to play it so many times. I really wish in both the Wind Waker HD and in the Majora's Mask 3D remakes that they had fixed that. Here's what I would have done. Play the melody once. You have to play the song once when you're in the area. And then after that, allow a repeat command So while you're still in that room, you can just press a button to continue to switch back and forth with the command melody, or to continue to lay statues down with the Elegy of Emptiness. Because, I mean, it just got really, really, really tedious having to go stand on a switch, play the Elegy of Emptiness. Okay, equip the Goron mask, stand on a switch, play the Elegy of Emptiness, equip the Zora mask, put it on, play the Elegy of Emptiness. At least the 3DS remake lets you kind of skip that a little bit, skip the cutscene part. But if they had done that, and then with the Wind Waker with the command melody, just once you played it in a room, allowing you to keep switching back and forth, I feel like that would have been the ideal way to do it.
Wind Waker HD squared. Pitch ideas for these new melodies.
I'm telling you, they need to do what they did with Super Mario All-Stars and release a collection of HD Zeldas on the Switch, including Skyward Sword, because it hasn't been done before. But you know what? I would say fuck it and just include both the 3D games, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask 3D, and the HD games, and just make one badass 5-game collection, and take some of the good things that we got. You know, you should leave Ocarina of Time 3D and Wind Waker HD pretty much exactly as they are, with just minor improvements, but really fix Majora's Mask 3D, taking away some of the more unpopular changes, and just expand on Twilight Princess HD and make it and do more with it.
Yeah, I feel like that's something they ought to do for like the 50th anniversary for Zelda. Just take whatever Nintendo console is prominent at the time, remaster every Zelda game that's come out to date, which would be probably like a decade-long project if they really wanted to do that, and just put it on the next console, like the Switch Squared or whatever comes out, you know, the Switch U.
And I'm telling you, Skyward Sword needs to be on Switch as well. But I suppose that we'll have to talk about that. As far as my number 3, you wrote it off, but I'm gonna go ahead and put the spinner. I know that it was a little underutilized, but goddamn, is it not the most fun item to use? And that's why it deserves to be on my list. I mean, it was just so fucking cool. You get to just ride on these tracks everywhere. It's kind of like fucking skateboarding. They should have added Link as a playable character in Tony Hawk's Underground with the spinner.
Oh man, you would have bailed so much. But yeah, the spinner's awesome, man. And Arbiter's Grounds, the dungeon that you get it in, is one of the best dungeons in the entire series.
Another fantastic dungeon from Twilight Princess. What is it with Twilight Princess and great dungeons?
I don't know. They really did it well. I guess they took dungeons and used them as a way to make up for how ugly the game is. But because they try to realism feel with Twilight Princess. But Arbiter's Ground, it kind of gives like a slight callback to the Forest Temple in Ocarina of Time, about how you have to go after the 4 Poes and get their souls back so that you can gain entrance to the next part of the dungeon. But the way you utilize the spinner in that dungeon is so cool. And the reason it didn't make my list is because they could have taken those aspects and put them more in the overworld. I mean, there's one piece of heart that you can get by riding the sides of the cliffs, and you have to time it perfectly. And of course, the grand staircase going up to fight Puppet Zelda and Ganon and Ganondorf, which great final boss fight. But that's a whole other tangent we can go off on. But I love the spinner so much. I just wish they had used it more, because it's a phenomenal item, and it's so much fun to use. I mean, it's so unique. You can stun and attack enemies with it. And I like how it kind of has a real feel where you can't just ride it everywhere. Eventually it slows down and you have to stop and get off, or it'll automatically kick you off of it. And phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think Twilight Princess has a pattern of a lot of really great items, and a lot of items that are just underutilized. So I will agree with that. But the spinner, when you do use it in Arbiter's Ground, is fantastic. I love not only the track puzzles, which involve you having to move back and forth between, trying to avoid spike traps, but also the being able to use the spinner to spin those little things on the ground. Where you stand on it and you just go, and then the fight against Stalord, also another great boss fight, definitely deserves to be in a top list of boss fights, because I mean that was just phenomenal. I loved using. I mean, how else could you creatively use an item like the spinner in a boss fight?
You can't. I mean, it's fantastic. You're the first stage of the fight. You're playing pinball pinball with his little minions on the sand, trying to get down to his spine so that you can crack it and he'll get down lower. And when you finally get those 3 hits in, because like Zelda usually does, it's 3, and you move on,
Yeah.
his head detaches. You think you beat him, but his head detaches, all the sand goes down, and the middle pillar rises up, and it's a high-speed death match going around the arena as you're rising to the top to try to get level with the spike that's on his head, and you just run into his mouth, and it's just such a good fight. Oh my
Phase
gosh.
2, baby. And the spinner made its way. It was such an awesome item that it made its way into Hyrule Warriors as a weapon. And Link actually rides the spinner and throws, and they somehow made it even more badass because he can not only have the one spinner, it's like an unlimited amount of spinners that he can launch with his one spinner. And it's got lightning on it, and it's just so fucking cool.
Yeah, we're really excited for Age of Calamity. That's going to be an amazing game, and I hope that they do a lot of callbacks to previous Zelda items. Oh, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Oh,
I'm really excited about
I'm
Age of Calamity.
so hyped for it, and I will have a Switch by the time it comes out. Just wanted to give you that news, Ash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm getting a Switch back, and I found out that you can recover your old save data from your Nintendo account. And since I still have my login information, I'll be able to get my Master Mode 100% Breath of the Wild completion, and minus I never finished the Champions Ballad, so I'll be able to go back through and do that. But yeah, I'm getting a Switch by the time Age of Calamity comes out. Super excited.
Well, good, because we're doing an episode on it. I was kind of worried about you there for a second.
Yeah, no, and I mean, if nothing else, I was just going to watch full gameplay of it because I will get as much information from that game as I can, because I mean, it's literally the story from 100 years prior to Breath of the Wild, but that's a different topic to discuss. We should keep talking about the spinner, because I'm kind of mad now that I didn't put it on my list, because it's such a badass item.
It is so fun.
It's so unique. Oh
Yeah.
man. Okay, so should I spit out my number 2?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so my number 2 was actually a really, really hard decision, but I went ahead and chose the whip from Skyward Sword. That item is amazing. It is so unique, and it is so creative in the way that you use it. You get it in one of the most beautiful dungeons, I believe, in Zelda history, the Ancient Cistern.
Oh, one of the best dungeons for
It
sure.
is so gorgeous, and I love this dungeon because it just adds so much culture to the game, and it's so beautiful. And it's kind of like the water temple of the game. You have to adjust different things, but not really. It's basically you using the item that you were given, the earrings, and you just swim. But the whip is awesome because you can take monster horns off of bokoblins if you need to collect them, but only the leaders, because usually only the leaders will take out their horns and signal people. But you could rip it off of them. You can use it to activate switches. You use it as kind of like the grappling hook from the Wind Waker, where you can grab onto I don't even know what they're called, but you can grapple across, you can whip yourself across ledges.
Indiana Jones style.
Indiana Jones style, yes, sir. And the fight with Collateral is one of the best bosses in the Zelda series. And I guarantee
Hands down.
this is a universal opinion among Zelda players who have played Skyward Sword. And a lot of people have an issue with the motion controls, but the whip utilizes them very well. However you whip with your hand is where the whip is going to go. You can distract and discombobulate enemies. In the fight with Collateral, you can whip his arms off and pick up swords and, oh my God, attack his heart with it. And dude, the whip is such a good item. And I was actually this close to making it my number 1, but my number 1, you will understand why it's my number 1, but we'll get to that later. But the whip is a spectacular item. It's so unique. It's so iconic for me. And I just don't think they could have done it any better. And you can use it everywhere. You know, it's something that you can use on the overworld whenever you want to distract. You can use it a little bit like the fishing rod in the fight with Ganondorf, where if you throw the fishing rod, he'll be distracted by the lure.
Yeah.
Literally, as soon you can do that with certain enemies with the whip too.
Oh, really?
Like they'll stare at it and they'll be like, "What was that?" And then they'll be so distracted, you can just sprint up to them and sword strike them. It's crazy how much you can do with the whip.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love being able to I love being able to swipe enemies' items using the whip. You know, like you said, like the bokoblins with the monster horn. And the whip, was definitely, like I said before, a consideration for me. I love its use in Skyward Sword in particular, but I also think they did a good job with it in Spirit Tracks. They just really expanded on it more in Skyward.
Yeah.
I love the motion controls. I love being able to Indiana Jones. And I love the Coloctos boss fight. I will definitely agree with you there, brother. That was the whip is really fun. And Skyward Sword, I think, did a good job actually of utilizing all its items. There's not very many, but they're all used.
Yeah, and you don't really stop using any of the items throughout the course of the game. And again, that's a topic for a later discussion, but they utilize it really well. And the whip, once you get the whip, you can use it throughout the rest of the game, because there's always going to be bokoblins that have monster horns, and you can further your collection of items with it. You can pick up dark relics. Well, you can't pick up dusk relics because you can't use items in the Silent Realms, but you can thwip and grab. Thwip is a good word for it.
Thwip.
You can thwip and pick up amber relics. You can once you get the whip, you don't have to use the bug net to get tumbleweeds anymore. You can just snag them right off the ground.
Wait, what? You can?
Mm-hmm.
I never tried that.
You can't do it when it's like right close to the wall, because you'll like knock it into the wall and it'll go and it'll go away, because those little bastards are so easy to get away from you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love the whip. Fantastic.
The whip was awesome. Oh, watch me whip.
The whip.
The whip.
The whip.
I want to do a playthrough of Skyward Sword where I'm just like, no, watch me whip. No, I'm
Watch
just
me
kidding.
name it.
I'm not gonna do that. That's really cringy.
Please,
But-
God.
My number 2 could have been a number 1. It was a hard choice for me as well, but I'm gonna say Stasis from Breath of the Wild. I definitely wanted to include the runes from Breath of the Wild. I almost put just the Sheikah Slate itself, and then I thought that's kind of not fair. Yeah, so I decided out of all the runes, Stasis I think is my favorite for sure, because I like the ability to not only stop items in time, which is a cool mechanic, being able to stop gear so you can run across and stuff, but also being able to grab an item, and put it in stasis, and then attack it to build up the kinetic energy and launch it. Definitely one of the most game-breaking mechanics, I will say. And I know a lot of people who got around puzzles using stasis instead of what they were supposed to do.
Oh yeah, no, stasis is incredible. Like you said, I was thinking about the buildup of kinetic energy, and you can do some. I mean, you can even freeze some bosses for a split second to kind of gain an advantage on them, and that's really cool.
I remember getting Stasis Plus as soon as I could, because Stasis Plus makes it even better, and you can freeze enemies in place. And by God, if freezing Lionels isn't like my go-to tactic now.
Man, the Lionels in that game are ridiculous. Well, they're the only Lionels besides the original Zelda and the Oracle games, but those are nothing. You can just beat those up instantly. But the Lionels in Breath of the Wild, the Stasis Plus really helps, because it's cool to get behind it, and as soon as they break out of stasis, you can just jump on their back and ride them until they knock you off. And oh man,
they're the Dark Nuts or Iron Knuckles of that game.
Except they're way harder, and
But way harder.
It'll kill you so fast.
Do you remember in Master Mode the Golden Lionels? Fuck me.
Don't remind me, man. Don't remind me. Good Lord, those things are so hard to take. I mean, if you've got good gear, then you can contend with them. But at the beginning of the game, you see one, you dip or you're dead.
The Lionels dropped really good weapons too.
They did.
Like excellent gear, but yeah, no, Stasis as well as the other runes, I will say, were really, really, really fun in Breath of the Wild. But I did enjoy the aspect of being able to freeze enemies, to be able to freeze items. I just love everything about it. As soon as I saw the trailers, I knew that I was going to love this item. And then when they added the kinetic energy component, and you know what my favorite thing is? Have you ever tried freezing a bokoblin with stasis while it's on a horse?
No.
It's really fucking funny because the horse keeps going. But the bokoblin just freezes. And then when it unfreezes, it's like, what?
Oh man, I love what you can do with the different runes. You can like do chain combos with the runes too. You can freeze an enemy with stasis, build up the kinetic energy on it, throw a bomb, and as soon as the stasis releases, they get flung, and you can fling them into the bomb, and the bomb will automatically blow up. I've seen some crazy YouTubers and just game clips of people just going crazy, switching between runes really quick. And yeah, the Sheikah Slate and the runes almost made my list, but I was just I want to see more with it, because they're going to make a return in Breath of the Wild too. I want to see what more they can do with it before I gain an opinion, because at first I was kind of mad that they didn't include all those items just separately that you got in dungeons, because when I went into Breath of the Wild, I thought that it was going to be along the lines of the same mechanics, but they added an entirely new spectrum to the world of Zelda, and it was great. I can't wait to see what they do with it. So that's why it didn't make my list, but at the same time, it is a favorite of mine. They're really cool, and there's so much potential there.
And they're coming back in Age of Calamity. All of the runes on the Sheikah Slates are going to be the items that characters use instead of items. Like in Hyrule Warriors, they're adding because in Breath of the Wild, your items were replaced by the Sheikah Slate and the runes. So that's what the characters use. That and fire, ice, and lightning rods.
Yeah,
are going to be your main items.
Those break so easily though. But maybe not in Hyrule Warriors. I don't know what they're going to do with that.
In Hyrule Warriors, they're consumable, so you grab one, and it's just like just like in Breath of the Wild. But the weapons are not breakable, from what I understand. But Link does actually, and I saw this. I'm really glad that they changed the mechanic, because instead of, and I don't know how all the other characters are going to be, but Link for sure, instead of just having like a few different selectable weapons, you actually have practically all of the weapons that you have access to in Breath of the Wild. And you can collect multiple, copies of them, and Link can select them, and he has choices between heavy and spear and one-handed weapons. So I'm really liking how they're basically transforming Hyrule Warriors into the Breath of the Wild mechanics.
Yep, and they're going to expand further upon the story, which is something Breath of the Wild heavily lacked. Like it was a really good game, but every element of the story was in the past, except for the end of the game where you meet Calamity Ganon, and Zelda's like, I can't hold him anymore. And I love the memories. Like, I will be honest, some of the memories made me tear up a little bit just because of how beautifully done they were. But they focused fully on the exploration. Okay, I'm going to go off on another tangent. So I guess we're jumping into our top picks here.
All right, drum roll. There you go.
Or a jackhammer, whichever one. But my number one pick, a lot of people are going to roll their eyes, but I can't even describe how much I love this item. I have loved it since my first time ever getting it. The Master Sword. 100%
Hell
the
yeah.
Master Sword. It is the greatest item in the history of Zelda, not only just because of how powerful it is and how badass it makes Link. Every cutscene in like a 2D or 3D Zelda game is so impactful in your adventure. Like,
I love the Master Sword cutscenes with the theme. It just makes me want to come, bro. I look forward to that in every Zelda game.
Dude,
I look forward to that moment.
Good. My favorite one is definitely Skyward Sword, because you spend the whole game building up the Goddess Sword to eventually become the Master Sword after you imbue it with the 3 sacred flames, and then they play that theme once you make it back to the Temple of Time and Zelda blesses the sword, and it finally, the edges of the blade come out and it's shining with that white divine light, and they play that theme, and I'm just like, it's so good. Oh, I nerd out every single time. And when you have 13 hearts in Breath of the Wild and you explore the Lost Woods, by the way, the best rendition of the Lost Woods in the Zelda series. It is creepy. It is spooky. You follow the direction of, I guess, the wind or the sparkles or whatever they are, the mist that's carrying you in the direction. And if you don't have at least 13 hearts, trying to take the Master Sword out of its pedestal will kill you.
Yeah.
So you have to actually... It doesn't matter in other Zelda games where you are when you get the sword. When you get the sword, you get the sword. But in Breath of the Wild, you have to earn the right to draw it from its pedestal.
Yeah, I love that.
In Twilight Princess, when you draw the blade from its pedestal, the wind is blowing the dust away from you just because of how divine the blade is. And it's literally called the Blade of Evil's Bane.
The
Fuck yeah.
sword that drives demons back. It is just the sword that seals the darkness. It is insane. And the purple handle with the green straps running around the bottom of it,
Yeah.
the kind of hexagonal shape where the or the Triforce crest is near the bottom of the blade, how perfectly sharp and straight the blade is. It's just so good. And I mean, you don't, like we were talking about in a previous episode, I think one of my first games was Oracle of Ages. You don't get the Master Sword unless you link those adventures and you take the Sacred Noble Sword, which was also possibly on my list, just because of how you obtain them. But you take the Sacred Noble Sword into a linked adventure, and when you get what would be the Sacred Noble Sword, that's actually the Master Sword, because they have, you know how they do in Link's Awakening, like the level 1, the level 2
Yeah.
items. The Master Sword is the level 3 item, and it does so much damage. But when you get the Master Sword in a Legend of Zelda game, you're at that point where you are truly becoming the hero of Legend. You have proven
Yes.
yourself worthy to be able to just wield that sword, because only the legendary hero can wield that sword and drive back the darkness. And that's why it's at the top of my list, because no true Zelda installment would be complete without that blade. And no playthrough of Zelda would be enjoyable if it was an optional weapon like it is in the Oracle games. No Zelda game would be complete without that blade. When I play through Zelda games, my long-term goal is to get that sword. And in the Wind Waker, they stretch it out too, because when you get it, Ganondorf said that blade has lost its edge,
Yeah.
and that blade has lost its touch, and its edges are dull. You couldn't possibly stand. And then you go to the Earth Temple and the Wind Temple, and you use Medley and Mocker to pray to get to you beat the final the bosses of those dungeons, and they pray for the blade and bless it with that divine light. There's just so much. Like, I'm ripping into this right now.
No,
I'm not letting you
by all
talk. I'm
means.
so sorry.
Everything that you said, it also really, really excites me. Like, I fucking love the Master Sword. I don't want to hit myself over the head for not thinking of it either, but it's definitely my favorite weapon of all Zelda games. Like, it is the best weapon, hands down. I love that it's the only weapon that can kill Ganon. Even in fucking Ocarina of Time, where technically the Bigron sword is more powerful, the final blow has to be the Master Sword.
Mm-hmm. You drive it right into his skull, and it's so badass. And of course,
And in Wind Waker, when you jump up and you bury it in his forehead, fuck yeah.
Yeah. That fight itself is just so good. And I mean, honestly, I like how they did it with the Wind Waker and in Twilight Princess, because when you finally drive it into him, he's done. In Twilight Princess, when you get that final blow at the end of the fight and you drive it into his scar that was already there from the priests back in Arbiter's grounds, you finally put it there, and he stands up and he talks about the wind and how he can, well, not the wind, that's Wind Waker, obviously. And he just looks up and he sees Zant, and Zant looks at him, breaks his own neck, and dies standing up. It's just, he's standing there. He's defeated. He's dead. He's gone. And that Master Sword, oh man. And in Breath of the Wild, I did not touch on this, but they added the Trial of the Sword.
Yes.
Where you could go through and power up your blade with 10, there's 3 different sets of 10 trials that you go through to upgrade your Master Sword by 10 points. And when it's fully upgraded, it does 60 damage. And it does 60 damage when you're in an area that's like sacred, like the castle or anywhere near Guardians, and you can take them out. But when you finish the Trial of the Sword, which, by the way, in Master Mode, there's 15 Guardians in the last trial, and it is so hard because you have to take them out with items that you found in the trials. You have to have the right amount of health. You have to have the ability to recover health if just one shield bash doesn't go the way you want it, or you take one hit, because you don't have armor except for the clothing that you found, and it's so difficult. And when you finally get it, it is so satisfying. And everywhere you go, that blade is fully charged, fully powered up at 60 damage. I did not like the way that, I mean, weapons are expendable in Breath of the Wild. They can break, but the Master Sword just loses energy and you have to wait 10 minutes for it to come back.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily like that, but I also understood, because they have to keep it like not OP. Because if it never broke, it would be really OP and you could just take out every enemy.
And the Master Sword is optional in Breath of the Wild. That's what's really cool. And like you said, you can go after it right away. Now, you're not going to be able to get it until you have 13 hearts. So you kind of have to grind to get to it. But And I do like how it's the only weapon in the game that's unbreakable. That was a nice touch. I like how it can throw sword beams whenever you're at full health, and I like how whenever you're around guardians or in dungeons or near Malice, the blade glows. But then when you complete the trial of the sword, it permanently glows. And does it reduce the cooldown? The cooldown time too?
No, it's still 10 minutes, but it takes a lot longer for the sword to break. And I feel like if you don't use it for a certain amount of time, it kind of gains its strength back.
Mhm.
It's kind of like the Hylian shield, but the Hylian shield will break over time. But you can just complete Terrytown and go purchase it for 3,000 rupees, so it's not that big of a deal. But the Master Sword is unbreakable, and once you finally have that Hylian tunic with the Master Sword and the Hylian shield, you feel like OG Link, and there is just nothing like it. I mean, of course, you can get the Breath of the Wild tunic by completing all 120 shrines, which there's
Yeah.
more than that, but there's 120 base shrines. But it just doesn't feel like a Zelda tunic. If anything, it feels like close to the Wind Waker. So
I did like the getting the tunic of the wild at the very end of Breath of the Wild. That was not that was a nice. Well, once you completed all 120 shrines, that was a nice touch.
yeah, and you have to complete all 120 shrines, or else are you even a Zelda fan?
Right, you didn't. I feel like, and I made this argument in our Breath of the Wild episode. I don't feel like you can ignore all the other side quests if you want. You don't have to power everything up. You don't have to collect all the Korok seeds, whatever. But to complete Breath of the Wild, you need to complete all 120 shrines because the game only has 4 dungeons. So to really get the most dungeon experience, you have to complete all the shrines. There's just no way around it.
Exactly, and I mean, why wouldn't you? It just provides more opportunity for new content, stuff for you to look at. Why wouldn't you do it? Just do it. Bite the bullet. Do it. Do it.
Just do it.
Nike. Just do shit.
I was thinking Shia LaBeouf. Just do it.
Do it.
I do want to say in terms of Master Sword cutscenes, and again, I look forward to the Master Sword cutscene in every game. But my favorite has got to be Breath of the Wild. Comes close. I love the one in Skyward Sword too, but my favorite's got to be the Twilight Princess. It's just so epic. The music is just great. You kind of hear that organ in the background, and there's that whole like the wind is blowing Link away in wolf form, and he's coming in, and he's trying to come towards the sword, and he's inching closer and closer, and then it transforms him into a human. And by the way, never at any point in the game did they actually tell Link that he needed to wield the Master Sword. They just told him he needed to get to it as a wolf. Link, out of pure instinct alone, pulls the sword out of the pedestal. Just out of pure instinct alone, he knows that he's the hero and he has to do it. And he grabs it, and then that triumphant music plays as he lifts up the sword, and you see the shockwave, and even Midna's fucking surprised. She's like, the sword chose you as its master.
Yeah, dude, you're absolutely right. Like that is the most instinctual Master Sword cutscene, because in Skyward Sword you've been building up to it all this time. You don't I mean, fresh players might not know that they're building towards the Master Sword, and so it's a huge surprise when you get up to it. But
Yeah.
Link knows that he's the one that's wielding this sword. He's the one that's building it up. And in Twilight Princess, Link just follows his instincts and takes the blade. He's like, this is mine. I'm going to defeat the King of Evil with this.
Yeah, he does. And so that's why I think it's one of the greatest moments. And just the music and the atmosphere and everything, and getting to that point with the, in the Sacred Grove was really cool. And I really think that, whatchamacallit, Twilight Princess really builds up to that scene really well. I like the Hyrule Warriors cutscene for taking the Master Sword as well. It shows up near the end of the playthrough, whenever there's a whole level dedicated to getting the Master Sword, and then you pull it out of the pedestal, and then the rest of the map you use the Master Sword, and it uses the exact same moveset as the Hylian sword, right? But it's more powerful, and it has that extra oomph to it, and it is hands down the most powerful weapon in the game, I think.
Yep. Oh yeah. Well, dude, I think we have beat the hell out of the Master Sword. I hope a lot of people also love the Master Sword as much as we do, but I'm actually dying to hear what your number one is.
Okay. Number one is the Fierce Deity's Mask.
Yes, dude. Oh my God. How did I know? How did I know that was what you were going to say? That is,
it is just a tidal wave of an item, bro. It wipes
Yes.
out everything in its path. Majora's Mask, no problem. Any boss, no problem.
No problem. It makes Majora. The fight against Majora just Majora's a complete joke. Okay, and I remember I think Majora's Mask is my top 1 boss fight in my top 5 favorite boss battles list, because the fight itself is actually just a complete cake when you get the Fierce Deity Mask, but it's okay because all of the work that it put into getting there. You know, having to collect all of the masks, having to complete those really fucking hard side dungeons, and the Majora fight is really hard without the Fierce Deity's mask.
And
but
the
with
music.
it, you know, yeah, with the music, holy shit, such a great atmosphere. God, I need to play that on like acid or something. That is just too crazy.
We'll get to hang out soon, bud. That's an idea. That's an idea right there.
That's an idea. Fuck yeah.
Oh man. Ah!
Yeah.
Fierce Deity Mask is awesome. I'm sorry, go ahead. I can go off on a tangent about this one too.
No, go ahead.
Dude, the Fierce Deity Mask is awesome because it is a culmination of all of the most badass traits that Link can carry. Not only, I mean, yeah, when you're a Zora and a Goron, you're kind of like this adult or bigger version of Link, but the Fierce Deity Mask brings out that adult Link. That strength, that drive, and that passion, and that's where I feel like all that power comes from, because you're not adult Link. You play as child Link the entire time. This game is a direct sequel to Ocarina of Time, and it's his adventure after he leaves Hyrule, and it's so beautifully done, especially when this game was completed in less than a year's time.
Yes.
They were trying to create a timetable. You told me about this, and it blew my mind. They wanted another title for the Nintendo 64, so they literally shat this game out, and it's the most beautiful. It's the most beautiful bowel movement.
Hey man, save it for the podcast.
Yes, sir, absolutely. But the Fierce Deity Mask is awesome. Not only I really, yeah, that's another thing for the podcast. But this mask allows you to wipe everyone out. Like nothing can really touch you. I mean, the final boss is an absolute joke. You can go back and refight the bosses and use the Fierce Deity Mask and just completely wreck them.
Yeah.
There is nothing that can stand in your way with this mask. And the blade that you wield,
That
like
helix
DNA.
looking sword, yeah. The double helix. Yes. And the sword beams, and yes, the Fierce Deity Mask is completely underutilized. Let's get that out of the way. We know that there's only very small parts of the game that you can use it, and Majora's Mask 3D added that you could use it in fishing holes, which is cool, I guess. But why they felt the need to add fishing holes in the first place, I'm not sure. But anyway,
I mean, they balanced it out. You know, it's literally
Yeah.
one of the most OP items in Zelda history. So they have to limit where you can use it, man. If you could just run around Termina wearing the mask and just obliterate.
no, if you use it in the fishing hole and you try to leave, the fisherman tells you can't because you're too scary. He's like, your face is too scary. I can't let you go.
That's awesome. I'm gonna need to play Majora's Mask 3D because I've only played the Nintendo 64 and the Wii version, so I'm gonna have to go through and do that. But the Fierce Deity Mask is amazing, and they balanced it out with how limited you are with the ability to use it. I don't know why they would allow you to use it in the fishing hole, but I guess it's to scare the fish to death so you can just take them with you.
It's to have another place to add it in the game. Since they were adding those in, they're like, yeah, we might as well let players use the Fierce Deity Mask here for whatever reason. But I will say the Fierce Deity Mask carries all the weight of just the struggle that you've gone through the entire game. I mean, because Majora's Mask is a game that definitely excels in its side quests. And so, you know, taking into account all of the people that you helped out throughout this adventure and going that extra mile, like I said, it's the culmination of everything that that you've done throughout the game, and this mask carries the weight of all of the people's sorrow and love and just everything.
I mean, with just how beautiful and how difficult the side quests are, it's the perfect reward, you know, because you get this for completing literally all of the side quests. You get this for trading in all of the masks for this one ultimate powerful. Just the only description I can think of is just tidal wave because it just takes out everything in its path.
Yeah,
It's beautiful.
And it made its way into Hyrule Warriors with one of the, I think it was the first DLC that came out with young Link, who actually transforms into the Fierce Deity Link for all of his moves, including his special move and his whatever they call it, magic move or whatever, and even some of his combos. So I thought that was an excellent inclusion as well. The Fierce Deity mask continues to pop up as a Zelda reference, and I just love all of the enigma and mystery that surrounded the mask. Like, you kind of want more detail on it, because there's almost even that hint there that the Fierce Deity was the bad guy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And the Fierce Deity was just as bad as Majora, and Link takes on its form, and that's your adult Link basically in the game. That, and the Goron and Zora forms as well. But it's so OP. It is so fun. It looks so fucking cool, and I love it.
Dude, this is awesome. We're doing our top fives, and we're coming up on an hour and a half. That's just so much goodness. Dude, I could probably throw in like 3 more items. I know we probably won't do that, but man, this is spectacular, man.
It is. But yeah, I guess that's our top 5 list. We'll go ahead and take a little bit of a break, and then we'll return to talk about Skyward Sword.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Collateral Gaming Podcast. A little brief intermission for you guys and for us, to work our big brains, give them a rest. You doing all right, bud?
Hell yeah, bro. I'm so stoked to talk about this. I love Skyward Sword. It is honestly one of my favorite Zelda games. And I remember it was one of the first, I guess Twilight Princess was the first game that I was like really, really hyped about. But Skyward Sword was right after that. That was the game like I was like super, super hyped about. I was there. I think it was the first Zelda game I was there since the original announcement, and I was ready for it.
Oh yeah, dude. I completely understand 100%. I've always been a fan of Zelda, and the first game I got was Oracle of Ages for the Game Boy Color. But when I really got into the Zelda games, I didn't really know about the Wind Waker or Twilight Princess. I was just focused on the Oracle games. And so when Skyward Sword was announced, I was knee deep in Zelda. I was such a huge Zelda fan. And Skyward Sword was actually the first game that I just got so hyped up about the release. Like, they announced it like 2-3 years prior. And since that point, it was just a waiting game. And then they announced the golden Wii remote with the Hylian crest on it. And I have to pre-order this. And so I did. I worked at the time. I was just, late middle school, early high school, so I didn't really have much money, but what money I did have, I put aside for the pre-order, and eventually, when the game came out, I think it was like November 2011.
Yeah, that sounds right. It was November, because I remember my birthday's in November.
Mm-hmm. I think it was the week before Thanksgiving it came out, and I went up to GameStop after school. I was so pumped, and I picked up my special edition copy of The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword with the 25th anniversary soundtrack.
Me too.
Yeah, and the golden Wii remote, man. I was so pumped. And oh
I
man,
didn't have the golden Wiimote. I had to actually have the Wii Motion Plus peripheral, which I think I bought in advance for this game.
yeah, yeah. I probably should have held on to it, but after about 5 years of having that golden Wii remote, like I sold it to somebody at GameStop for $200. They bought it for me
damn.
for $200, man. But yeah, Skyward Sword to me, and I know a lot of people might disagree with me on this, but Skyward Sword to me is my favorite installment in the Legend of Zelda series. It is the origin story for the entire series. It is, I mean, it's how it all began. Demise is the start of the long-term curse between Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf. He is that beginning incarnation of evil. It's the story building up the Master Sword. It's the first time where Link ventures out into his journey as the hero of legend. And between the story and the music and the gameplay, to me, it's one of my favorite games of all time. It's absolutely spectacular. So
I don't disagree with you, brother.
yeah, it's amazing. I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. And from the get-go, the first thing I noticed was just the layout of the game. It had your basic beginning of the Legend of Zelda, like you wake up or you start out in like your room and you're in just basic clothing. You're in Knight Academy clothing, which is just the students before they get promoted to knighthood. And it starts out, Link is dreaming about just the world down below, Hyrule. I think it's Faron Woods that he's looking at. And then all of a sudden, the Imprisoned just comes out of the ground and consumes Link, and he wakes up to Zelda's Loftwing spitting a letter in his face. And it's spectacular. And just for me, that moment set the tone for the entire game. This game was going to be lighthearted, but adventurous and just so pure and magical and everything I had ever wanted in a Zelda game. I just couldn't wait.
I have to agree. It had everything that I wanted. When it first came out, it was my favorite because I was just super hyped. Over time, I kind of rethink that a little bit. Rethunk? Yeah. Rethought? I don't know. Over time, I had time to kind of rethink that, and I don't know if I necessarily call it my favorite now. I mean, Majora's Mask and Breath of the Wild have that honor for me, but it's definitely up there. I gotta say it's probably in my top 5. I just had to have to kind of set out, and because for me, I have a lot of ties. Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, I think, are number 2 for me, and they're both tied. I both love them. But maybe Skyward Sword right after that. I gotta say, probably. I don't know, and I know that's heresy. Ocarina is not. I don't hate it. It's a great game. I respect it. I respect the hell out of it. The only reason it's so lower on the bottom of my list is because I think that every Zelda game that came out after Ocarina builds on everything that's good in Ocarina. And I think they did a better job with Twilight Princess, with The Wind Waker, and with Skyward Sword. Besides a few aspects of Skyward Sword, I mean, yes, it's a little bit more linear than Zelda games. Yes, they kind of hold your hand in the beginning. But god damn, the story, incredible. The graphics, beautiful. They still hold up today. I love the relationship between Link and Zelda. I love the motion controls. And you can hate me all you want for this. I had little to no problems with motion controls. This playthrough I did, and I think it's because my age-old, almost 10-year-old Wii Motion Plus, the same accessory I originally played this game with, I think is kind of failing on me now. So I think that's why I've been having issues with it. And I'm using, some of the original Wii remote and nunchuck that came with my system as well. I'd like to buy one of those golden Wii remotes, the Wii Motion with the Wii Motion Plus built in. But anyway, I had a little bit of difficulty this time, but I remember when I played it, I had little to none. I mean, and if it does get off, you can easily calibrate it. I like that it uses the internal gyroscope instead of, the sensor, so it's a lot more reliable, actually.
I mean, yeah, 100%. Like, if the controls feel a little bit off, you can just use a weapon that you're aiming with or you need to aim with, and you can press down on the D-pad to center it. Or you could go to the map or the plus screen or where your inventory, and you can center it that way as well. It's really easy to get back on track if the controls feel a little off. And I 100% agree with you on almost every aspect. Ocarina of Time is a fantacular. I was going to go for spectacular and fantastic. It is an absolutely fantastic video game. It's one of the best of all time. It really set the bar for 3D adventure gameplay with the Z targeting and just the controls and just how you interacted with the environment. And for that, yeah, it deserves some really high praise. But for me, I've always been a big goon on fluidity in video games and, just how they looked and how they presented themselves. Link and Zelda didn't really have a big connection in that game. And I loved it, but I've only beaten Ocarina of Time twice, and once normal and once on Master Mode. And just because I knew Master Mode was a little bit different, I wanted to experience it. But it's a beautiful game, but it's not up there in my favorites. But with Skyward Sword, you talking about how they do hold your hand in the beginning. They don't hold your hand in the beginning nearly as badly as Twilight Princess. I mean, shit, playing Twilight Princess, they treat you like you've never played a video game before in your life.
Well, Twilight Princess was just dull in the beginning, I felt. I don't think they held your hand too much, but for me, it was just dull. The beginning is just a chore to get through, and I will admit that. It doesn't really kick off until at least like an hour or two into the game, which is kind of a disappointment. Whereas where Skyward Sword does hold your hand, it is at least entertaining. I enjoyed what I was doing. And I kind of needed that. I hadn't done a Zelda with motion controls before. So, and then when it opens up, it opens up. The lack of a complete open world is also kind of a disappointment as well, just because I am used to it. But again, Skyward Sword I don't really lament it while I'm playing it. You know what I mean? Like, I felt like there was plenty of room to move around. I felt like there was plenty to do. Having to go back to these regions all the time. I mean, it's no more disconnected than Wind Waker is, and that's a fantastic game. Nobody really complains about the lack of an open world there. I mean, you've got the sky. I love flying with the Loftwing. I'll tell you, it's a hell of a lot more entertaining than sailing was.
Or riding your horse through Hyrule Field, which Twilight Princess did that relatively well. You could fight enemies on horseback, and that was a lot of fun. But there's nothing quite like sprinting towards the edge of a cliff, diving off, and whistling to call your Loftwing. Yes, and then
it's so badass.
He catches you, and it transitions into the open sky where that beautiful sky theme, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, just picks up. The music in that game is spectacular, and you can fly later on in the game when you're closing in on, I think it's right before you learn the Song of the Hero, where you learn the spiral charge with your Loftwing, where you can where your Loftwing will do a barrel roll in the air and you can attack enemies with that. But just flying through the open air, visiting and exploring the different islands, and finding goddess cube chests if you struck them down in the land below. The hunting was very fun in that game. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, the beginning is you're right, the beginning is kind of closed off, but once it opens up, it really opens up. It takes a hell of a long time to get to the Skyview Temple, but once you get there to that first dungeon, the game is yours. And even though it's a very linear plot and certain things are everything is pretty much tied together back to back to back in that game, it's still, the story is so good that it sucks you in and actually makes you feel like you're a part of it. And so even though you're experiencing this in a linear format, you never want it to stop because it's so good. And I will say that the Song of the Hero is a bit of a momentum killer, but it has one of the best what would you call them? Stealth segments. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
You land on the Elden Volcano and you lose all your stuff.
Oh, I actually love that part.
Yeah, it's got one of the best stealth segments in the Zelda series. But to me, it was kind of like a momentum killer because after you finish the Fire Sanctuary and you finally have the Master Sword, you kind of want to go kick Girahim and Demise's ass. You want to just go in full throttle, find the Triforce, But I will say, finding the music notes in Farron Woods swimming through the water is one of the coolest things I will ever experience in a Zelda game. That is.
Oh my God, yes.
Because I'm a music
just transforming.
Nerd,
Yeah, no, for sure. But just for me, it was transforming the environment, taking a familiar environment you've been to before, filling it up with water. So you know what I mean? That was cool.
And her reasoning for doing it was because she was just pissed off about all the monsters being in the environment. She was like, these meddlesome monsters have messed with my environment for too long, so I just gave them a little treat and filled up.
Too bad they come back right after.
Yeah, exactly.
It would have been a nice touch if they were gone the rest of the game, but
that would be cool. But I mean, the water is so deep. It almost goes up to the top of the tree, and literally the whole place is submerged in water. And when you think about it, when you're outside the temple grounds, like when you first land there, It kind of doesn't make sense because with the water being that high, it should definitely come over the gate. But it's 2011. I'll give them that. It's fine. But go ahead.
Oh, okay. Actually, I was thinking about the enemies too. And one thing I love about Skyward Sword, and I think this point was actually advertised before the game came out, but every enemy is a challenge because you have to use motion controls to fight with them. So any enemy can kill you, especially if you're playing hero mode. So every single enemy is its own kind of strategic fight, and all of the bosses are super creative. All of the items are used in creative ways, and I think we brought this point up earlier, but all of the items are used throughout the game, and there's not very many of them, but they're all used, and they're all used effectively. And in this case, less is more, because we got a good use. I will say the only exception, of course, is the slingshot, because who's going to use the slingshot when you have the bow? I mean,
you can't see me, but I'm raising my hand.
Okay.
I'm raising my hand. Because you can upgrade it to the scatter shot, and that thing's badass. I love it.
That's true, and I already have in my playthrough. And I'll retract that a little bit. There are some situations where it's better to just go ahead and use the slingshot, if nothing else, to conserve your bow or arrows. I was gonna say your bow ammo. Those are called arrows, dummy.
Bow ammo, bammo.
I agree with you. Go ahead. We're too excited.
To say it's beautiful. But I like using the slingshot a lot because there are some enemies. I mean, this game does it so well. A lot of people hate on the motion controls, but it really opens up a way for you to combat each enemy differently. It's beautiful. Like the bokoblins are usually one of the simplest enemies in a Zelda game to kill, but they're tough as hell in this game because they are literally trying to block, and you have to look at where their sword placement is to perfectly time your strikes so that you can knock them down on the ground. And some of them you even have to finish off with a final blow because they're tough. I mean, the Master Sword makes it a little bit easier, but that's one thing I really like. And using the slingshot helps me out a lot because they're not expecting to get hit by some seeds, and so it stuns them. So you can sprint in really quick and take them out before they have a chance to try and block you. And so that's why. And the scatter shot, you can stun multiple enemies at a time and then run in, do a spin attack. And there's like 4 or 5 different spin attacks you can do depending on how you wiggle your Wii Remote and nunchuck. And so there's a huge variety that came with these motion controls, and it makes the game so much better. Say what you want about the motion controls, but I think they're fantastic.
I love them. I love doing the Skyward Strike. You just hold the Wii Remote up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's instantaneous once you get the Master Sword. It's like, blink, done.
Bling. Yeah. Fucking awesome, dude. Especially when you do the New Game Plus, or should I say Hero Mode, because you carry over your Skyward Strike from the previous game. Not your sword. Your Goddess Sword, you still have to upgrade, but the Skyward Strike is actually more powerful than your regular sword strike. So you can knock out some of the enemies that way. You kind of have an advantage, which is good because all the enemies do double damage, and there's no hearts anywhere unless you equip the heart medal. Anyway, but what I like is that whenever the Skyward Strike upgrades happen later, they add on. They stack on top of the ones that you already have. So you can literally get an instantaneous Skyward Strike once you get your second go around with the True Master Sword.
Yeah, and I mean, I haven't gone all the way through a New Game Plus playthrough. I probably should, since it's my favorite Zelda game. But I love the little element of there being more of a challenge to the game. That's just how I've been. And yes, I do understand that hero mode is literally twice as hard and you don't find any health. So I should probably just bite the bullet, suck it up, and do it. Just to experience the similarities in the Skyward Strike from the end of the regular game to the beginning of the New Game Plus.
Yeah, and for people that are going to come... Sorry, go ahead. For people that complain that Skyward Sword is too easy, which, I mean, I don't really think it is. I think there are definitely some difficult parts. But for people that do complain that, because I've heard that, play hero mode. And if they do remake Skyward Sword for Switch, which I really hope they do, I would hope that maybe they should just offer hero mode from the beginning as an option. For people that have already played the game before, or for people that want a bigger challenge. And I kind of wanted to get into this too because I was thinking about it in advance, and I was talking to you about some of these ideas, but I really have a few ideas as to how they could make it work. I mean, obviously we have the Joy-Cons, so motion controls aren't going to be an issue. The Joy-Con has an internal gyroscope, so it would work pretty much functionally identical to the Wii Motion Plus. I don't know if the sensors are as good, but I'd expect that they are.
Well, with what they did with Breath of the Wild, you could kind of say that they might even be a little better. I mean, sure, you're not necessarily aiming with a cursor, but it's kind of linked to how the gyroscope works within the within the Joy-Cons. It's kind of like paired with what's going on the screens. You can control it even better, in my opinion. And if they like switch to a free form for when you're like doing sword fighting and it just relied heavily on what you're doing with the Joy-Cons versus what you're doing when you're aiming, I think it would work perfectly well. But you said something about the Switch Lite and how that might not work, and so they would have to switch to actual like dual analog controls or something along those lines.
I think it could work. They would need to offer the option. Like if you're playing, I think they would need to offer both control schemes. So if you have the Joy-Cons, great. You can do the motion controls but for people that are going to complain about it, and also for people like me that have a Switch Lite or people that play in handheld mode. And, yes, you can pair a couple of Joy-Cons to a Switch Lite, but it's not going to come with it. I think they should offer, and they did the same thing with Super Mario Galaxy. For people that are in handheld mode, or, they offered the touchscreen play, for the Super Mario Galaxy controls. And in this game, I think a dual analog stick could work. I think you could use the right stick. Obviously, aiming your sword, you would do it exactly the same way, but with quick. Think about how you do smashes and smash attacks by flicking the stick rather than moving. That's how you would do like slices, right? You would double tap in one direction for a spin attack. Obviously aiming controls would work exactly like you think they would with dual analog sticks. And then for like the bombs, for instance, you would flick up to move into throw mode, and you would flick down to move into roll mode, and then you'd flick again in that same direction to actually do it. So if you want to do it real quickly, you could just, again, just double tap it. I think it could work. It would be maybe a little bit awkward, but no more awkward than, again, Super Mario Galaxy implementing the touch controls because they absolutely needed to. I think that they would need to offer the option. And like we said with Metroid Prime 4, offering both control schemes would be a great way to appease everyone who would play the game. And nobody could complain that the dual analog sticks controls weren't good, or that the motion controls weren't good, because if you don't like one, you can do the other.
Exactly. They would just need to take a lot of time. Nintendo would have to put a lot of time into making it smooth, because if they don't focus on it and they still give us the option, I'm happy that they give us the option. But if there's like a few bugs in the system, it could fuck everything up. And that's not something that would blow over too well, because if they're going to remaster this game, which they should, because they've been remastering Zeldas on their 10th anniversary and they've been doing a spectacular job. Like, I know they waited a little bit longer to do Link's Awakening, but my God, that game is beautiful. Twilight Princess HD is spectacular. Wind Waker HD is one of the best remasters of a game I've ever seen in my life. And they did such a good job smoothing out the control schemes and your interactions with the environment while keeping the same basic, beautiful touch that these games had in their original versions. They need to do that with Skyward Sword, or it's going to go up in smoke really fast. Now, I know for a fact that they can take the Switch and make Skyward Sword be one of the most beautiful remasters in Zelda history, because they skipped over an entire generation, I mean, Twilight Princess, when it came out in 2006, was for the GameCube and the Wii. And I think it was one of the last titles that was actually released on the GameCube. But when they remastered it, it was on the Wii U, and it was spectacular. The only other Zelda game besides Link's Awakening that skipped a generation was the Wind Waker, because it skipped the Wii. But you could replay it. You could play it on the Wii because the Wii had GameCube compatibility.
I rationalized it as Twilight Princess was a GameCube game that just last minute got ported to the Wii. We'll count it as the GameCube. And so if we follow the pattern, we should be getting ports of a game 2 generations after, typically.
Yeah.
Obviously, Link's Awakening is a huge difference, but technically they did already port it twice, so or ported it once already.
Yeah, they ported it for the DX version, and then they remastered it a year ago, 2 years ago?
Yeah. But older games notwithstanding, it seems like they have a pattern now, and that seems to be a recurring theme. So, if this is to be believed, then we didn't really have any Wii U games for Switch, unless you want to count Breath of the Wild, which I guess you could put it in the same boat, but I think it was, I think the Switch was late enough in the development that it's a Switch launch game, and it was optimized for Switch as much as it was for Wii U. But theoretically, not the Switch's successor, but the one after could be seeing a remake of Breath or a remaster of Breath of the Wild, or a port, if not the one after, Or no, I'm sorry. No, the Switch's successor technically could see a remaster. Although, with Nintendo, I mean, I guess there's not really going to be a rule. I mean, they're already sending Wii U games onto the Switch, so nearly every popular Wii U game is all the first party ones are getting ported to the Switch. So
Yeah,
I mean,
100%. And we know for a fact that Breath of the Wild was meant to come out on the Switch, but people who couldn't afford a Switch and still had a Wii U was like, "That's not fair. We want to play the new Zelda game." And so Nintendo was like, "All right, we'll port it to the Wii U."
when it was originally announced it was going to come out on the Wii U, I remember that. The Switch hadn't even been announced yet, but the Switch's announcement still came like midway through Breath of the Wild's development and not like right at the end like with Twilight Princess. So it was optimized for both systems. Whereas Twilight Princess was a clumsy attempt at porting to the Wii. It wasn't perfect, and we all know it was. The GameCube version is, for a good reason, considered the superior version. I mean, literally all they did was flip the version in the Wii and add a weird pointer system for no reason. I don't know why it's there. It's weird. And then
It doesn't make sense.
Skyward Sword is what a Wii game, Wii Zelda game should have been. 1-to-1 sword controls, not, just with the Wii version of Twilight Princess, you just shake the Wii remote and Link swings his sword as he normally would. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we love the motion controls. You and I both, and I'm glad that's something that we could bond over. Remember when you brought it up to me, like, what do you think about Skyward Sword? And I was like, I love it. I think the only people that really hate it are going to be Zelda fans. Not even. I honestly want to say it's probably just a vocal minority, if anything. I don't think it's even represents the majority of players. I mean, because Skyward Sword got 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 in most gaming magazine.
Yes, it did.
People loved it.
100%. It was
There's
a
just
Wii
some
masterpiece.
Yeah, it was Game of the Year. I remember. I had it as my Facebook cover photo.
Oh yeah.
A Zelda game always make Game of the Year, but and it was very technically underpowered compared to games at its time. Remember, this game came out at the same time Skyrim came out, so make of that what you will. I will say yes, the game was technically underpowered, but we already came to expect that on Nintendo, and it's a fucking Zelda game. Who cares? It's a goddamn masterpiece.
Yeah, and the Wii came out in 2006. A Zelda game that's going to come out 5 years later, literally right before the Wii's next generation. It's not going to be the most powerful thing in the world. What we were after was gameplay and story, and damn it, we got it. There is not a single Zelda game on the planet that touches Skyward Sword's story. And I will say that without a doubt. It's okay for people to disagree. Ash, I think we are on the same page with the story because it has me on the edge of my seat even 10 runs later.
Oh my God, Zelda and Link's relationship? Well, they actually have a relationship this time. It's right in front of you. I mean, it's teased, but God damn it, she's so cute. She just like gets right at his face, and there's that when she pushes him off instead, and then there's that one point where she's about to say I love you before she gets taken. She's like, there's something I've been meaning to talk to you about, It was right in your face.
Sky after the wing ceremony, man. And Girahim and his poorly timed tornado just comes out.
Girahim!
All the love.
Talk about another great character. I mean, Demise is a little bit underdeveloped. He only shows up at like the very end. But that is a convincing reason as to why, for instance, they explained the whole idea of the reincarnation of Zelda, Link, and Ganondorf. And that was the aim. We knew that we were coming into that. This is the first game chronologically, and I have no reason to believe that they'll ever do a game earlier than this. I mean, this is right at the fundamentals.
Yeah, I can't see that. This is literally the cream of the crop of origin stories, and I don't see how they could do it better. They pretty much hit the nail on the head with this game. And Demise, I had no idea that he was coming until like towards the end of the game. Like I thought that Girahim was just going to get so pissed off that you beat him twice throughout the course of the game, and he was just going to evolve in this crazy final form, which he did. Like he got super jacked, and like put like an impenetrable armor around his skin, and you do one of the most crazy fights in a Zelda series ever, where you start like super high up in the air and you have to knock him off the platform and final blow, drive your sword into his chest.
Yes,
twice.
And the first couple times it doesn't go. I remember that. That's an awesome moment because you think you're gonna do it. I've got the ending blow, and then he rolls out of the way. Oh shit! And then that lightning skyward strike. Oh, it's such a good boss fight. I just want to come.
Oh, and it was, and it was insane. Like realizing that Girahim was 100% in sync with Demise, not just because he was serving Demise as his master, but Girahim was literally Demise's sword.
Like that.
Yeah, he was the
crap
Fi.
was wild to me. Yeah. Oh, I've never made that connection. Like Girahim is the 5. Dearest
Yeah.
Liza's blade.
He's the demon blade. He looks, if you look at, he looks like his true form looks like the Master Sword, but just like kind of black and demonic looking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a sword spirit like Fi, but obviously he's been around much longer, so he's come to develop a personality. Can we count that as the first LGBTQ representation in the Zelda universe? Because Girahim is definitely gay, and I don't mean that in a bad way. He's a great character. I fucking love him. I know Nintendo I think there was a little bit of controversy. They came under fire for the first gay seeming villain. I mean, gay seeming character to be a villain. But come on, he's fabulous.
I couldn't tell in the beginning of the game whether he actually wanted to kill Link or if he wanted to, hook up. But when he first appeared, my first thought was, "Yes, Queen, come on."
Hell yeah! And he comes behind him and he does that thing with his tongue, and you're just like, "Oh." And he's just toying with him. I like how he's just toying with him that first boss fight in Skyview Temple.
And then he doesn't realize just how powerful this kid actually is. He's like, "Run and play, Sky Child, but get in my way again, and you're dead." I love that so much. Like, Girahim has the most personality out of any Zelda villain that we faced, except maybe, the Gerudo Witch's Twin Rova, or Ganon in Ocarina of Time. Ganondorf in Ocarina of Time. Yeah. So, fantastic.
I love him. Can we, let me see. Yeah, can we talk about the Girahim fights? Because, I mean, I feel like that's a big highlight of the series. I mean, the game, my bad.
You fight him 3 times.
I mean, it is a highlight of the series. Because, it's fucking, those are some of the best fights. And there are a lot of great boss fights. We already mentioned Collateral earlier. Some of the other great boss fights, what we have, Scaldera, easy but fun. It's an absolute blast. The fucking Moldarak, who becomes just a regular enemy later on. Tantalus was kind of a letdown. I'm not gonna lie. Not a big fan of the design. Yeah. I wasn't a big fan of the design. Again, it's the whole there's the one big eye, blah blah blah. But that moment, because the Sand Ship is one of my favorite dungeons in Zelda, like of all time. It was in my top 10 list. And I just love how that boss battle opens up, because you've got the tentacles ravaging throughout the ship. You get the boss key, and then you got to run all the way up to the deck. That's a great moment, just all up until the execution.
Ship's filling with water.
Yeah,
that's terrifying to me. Like, you're trying to get to the top of the ship while it's filling with water, and all these tentacles are busting through the ship that you can only repel with the Skyward Strike. And you get to the top, you go outside, it's all stormy and dark, and the water's going crazy, and then a Toy Story creature pops up.
I have mixed feelings about the imprisoned fights. I think if maybe they just weren't so repetitive, if it wasn't so many times, if you didn't do it 3 times in the game. Because I didn't mind fighting Girahim 3 times. Those were great fights. But the imprisoned fights do get a little bit old, but they are a challenge. I mean, I think the first time I fought the imprisoned, that was pretty cool. The last time was pretty cool. If they could have just kept it to the 2 fights, it probably would have been fine.
Yeah, you're right. When they implemented Groose into the last one, he literally has to fling you off of his little homemade cannon onto the imprisoned's head, because that's the only way you can get there quick enough to get the spike. And he's flying up out of the center, and it's terrifying. You're shaking. You're like, oh crap, he's moving. That's cool. The second fight, the one that's in the middle, it just sucks.
And the final fight, you can completely wreck him. You don't have to fight him the normal way. You can just launch into his head and boom. There's kind of a way to cheat the other fights like that too. I don't know if you're aware, but you did the boss rush. You probably are, but the easiest way to actually fight the imprisoned was to go up a level above him and then just hop on his head. Normally he would try to shake you off, but if you were fast enough, you could just knock the shit out of that thing. Or if you stun him with a Groose Bomb first and then did it.
The reason I never hit the big gust of wind in the middle, I guess that's what you'd call it, the big one in the middle that sends you to the top of the sealed grounds, is because usually when he stands up after you've knocked him on his ass, there's a cutscene that shows him slowly standing up, and you're still falling, but you can't control it. And so even if you get close enough to his head to land on it, and that cutscene starts, you just see him standing up and Link just falling gracefully, and then he just
automatically opens up his sailcloth and you're back at the bottom to do it all over again. So getting on the ledge above him and just jumping on his head, that's the easiest way to do it. And the first time I did the boss rush was for the last piece of heart in the game. And the second time I did it was to get the Hylian shield. That's if you're gonna play that game like a true Zelda player, you have to get the Hylian shield. You just have to do it. You have to. And the second time I tried to go for records on all of the boss fights, and I think with each of the imprisoned fights, I was able to beat them all in under a minute and a half. And it was because of that strategy right there, getting onto the upper level and jumping on his head. Galactos, which is one of the best bosses in the entire series, it took me 5.5 minutes the first time doing the boss rush. And I think I sent you this picture over iMessage, but the second time, I was just trying to get through the bosses as fast as I could, and I wasn't even paying attention. But I beat him in 2 minutes and 40 seconds. I will never forget that, because that boss is hard. It's beautifully done, but it's hard, and you have to be careful because he's crazy with his arms and swinging swords and throwing blades at you. He's covering his heart so that you can't attack it. You have to rip his arms off with the whip and pick up the swords. It's crazy. And so that leads into kind of what I wanted to talk about next. The dungeons in that game and how they lead up to the bosses. You said that the Sand Ship is one of the best dungeons in the series to you. I can totally agree with that because, for one, it's the only dungeon in the game where the entry to the dungeon, the cutscene is different. Instead of him staring down into the abyss of this door before walking down the stairs, it shows Link just determined to get up to the top of this ladder to see what's going on the ship. And also the use of time shift stones in the Lanayru Desert is one of the coolest things in Zelda. It brings a cool, different time travel aspect where you're not really time traveling. You're just activating a stone that shows so much time in the past within a certain area that the stone affects. And the puzzles in the ship sand, the sand ship, are some of the most intricate and delicate but amazing puzzles. Like the angles that you have to get where you're standing on the lower levels of the ship and you have to shoot through the roof to hit the time shift crystal that changes the whole ship with a bow and arrow after you get it. The boss battle where you're fighting the pirate captain on the long plank-like structure where you have to knock him back and finally knock him off. That fight is so cool, and you fight him twice. You fight him in the sand ship and then once in Skykeep. The one in Skykeep.
Well, you fight his like it's just like twin brother or something. He's another dude, but he's similar.
They're the Mario Brothers of this house.
Well, that's Ingo and Talon, right?
Ingo and Talon, yep.
Yeah, they're Luigi and Mario. I mean, at least their designs are based off of them. Yeah, I have to agree with you. Even the first dungeons in Zelda's usually aren't the best. But I gotta say, Skyview Temple is a fantastic first dungeon. The other game that does that well is Wind Waker's Dragon Roost Cavern is actually one of the more memorable dungeons, and it was the first one. But I like the Skyview Temple, and you actually return to it at one point. That's cool.
Yeah, that's Earth when you Temple, have to get the sacred water to heal the Farron Dragon, right?
Right. I think so, yeah. And then Earth Temple was fun, a great fire dungeon. Ancient Cistern, you mentioned that earlier as one of your favorite dungeons, and it's actually a good water dungeon.
It's beautiful. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Lanayru Mining Facility is the other one that uses time shift stones, and it almost would have made my list, but if I have to compare the two, Sand Ship, I think uses it more effectively because you just have the one time shift stone, and you just have to come at it with different angles, and you're on a pirate ship. I mean, that's cool. A robot pirate ship.
Dude, most definitely. And actually, after going back through the game, I'll honestly say that between all the dungeons in the game, either the Earth Temple or the Fire Sanctuary, those are two of my least favorites in the game. Simply because, the Earth Temple's really fun. The aspect of rolling on that ball across the lava after you get the bomb bag, after defeating those two Lizalfos, which those Lizalfos in that game are cool because they jump away and tease you by hiding under their arms, and you have to angle your strikes to hit them. But the ball in the Earth Temple is definitely the coolest aspect of that dungeon. The boss is really cool, Scaldera, where it's like a giant ball of live animated molten rock just chasing you up this giant slope, and you have to wait for him to breathe in. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I think that's the boss that I did really, really quickly. I think I got him in under a minute because I don't remember how I did it, but it was super fast. You could just chuck a couple bombs in his mouth, use a Skyward Strike against his eye, and just slash it a couple times, and you're done.
I usually don't. I'll try to time some bomb throws in there, but if you're standing on the slope and he starts charging towards you,
he will charge towards you. Like he'll change his movement, his directional movement towards you. And if you stand close to a bomb flower and then sprint
Yeah.
away from it, he'll hit the bomb flower and immediately start rolling towards the bottom. And you can just chase him sprinting down there. And
That's what I did.
I always drink a stamina potion right before that fight, just so
That's
I
smart.
I never run out of stamina, so I could just run up and down the slope. That boss is cool. The dungeon, yeah, it's all right. Using the beetle, as we talked about in the lists
Yes.
prior to this, using that to cut the ropes of the bridges, that's pretty cool.
That was cool. And you mentioned the stamina. Again, the only thing I don't like about the stamina is that it's not upgradable. I wish it was, like in Breath of the Wild. And they did expand on that finally. But it was a great aspect to bring into the game, being able to run other actions using stamina. I like that. I like the shield durability. That was cool, having to manage that. And you could upgrade your shield, and you can repair it, and you can use potions. I like the... What's some of the other things that were like precursors to Breath of the Wild? I think that those were the main two things: was item durability and stamina. As I remember thinking about it, I like that one of the items that one of the equipment that Link wears, because you don't use different tunics in this game. There's just the beginning outfit and then the hero's tunic, or the hero's clothes. But I do like that the fire shield earrings. That was cool. One of the gear and the equipment is for our fucking earrings.
Yeah, you get
And they look
one
cool.
set of earrings for swimming, and then you get one earring for swimming, and then the other earring is for avoiding.
Was the swimming an earring? I thought it was just like the scale or something.
Oh, you're right. It is a dragon scale, and the gift that you get from
Yeah.
the Elden province is to avoid hot temperatures, like super hot temperatures, so you can access the fire sanctuary.
And that's a throwback to Ocarina, because you use Zora scales, I think, or the silver scale and the golden scale, so, and the water dragon scale. And in Hyrule Warriors, those are actually what's her face, Ruto, worst character in the game, by the way, but those are Ruto's weapons, the silver scale and the golden scale. Girahim and Fi both made it into Hyrule Warriors, and they're actually some of the better characters in the game. Girahim takes a little bit to get used to, but once you get used to his moveset, he's really fun. And Fi is just awesome, just dancing through the battlefield. The Imprisoned, of all boss fights, I don't know why that's the one that they brought, because it's kind of the most hated boss battle in the game, but is a boss in Hyrule Warriors. They have Link's Skyward Sword outfit and Zelda's Skyward Sword outfit are playable. I wish Demise, if they ever do I know they're doing Age of Calamity, but I still have hope that one day they'll do a Hyrule Warriors 2, which is just kind of a, all characters kind of thing, maybe. I don't know. I always thought that Demise would be a great addition. And Groose, oh my God. We haven't even talked about, Groose, our favorite character.
Yeah, Skyward Sword has some of the most profound and intricate character developments. Like Fi, over the course, is at the beginning of the game just a spirit that resides within the sword that's supposed to guide the hero, and she's just kind of doing her job. But at the end, when she's parting ways with Link, and over the course of the game, you get closer to Link, or she
gains sentience at the end, and I think that's what happened with Girahim. Is he's just been around longer. That's why he has a personality.
Yeah.
But she, and a lot of people complain that she's annoying, but I felt that she wasn't nearly as obtrusive as Navi. I mean, with Navi, you had to listen to, hey, you couldn't ignore it. With Fi, it was just kind of a very non-obtrusive hum. You could just ignore it if you wanted to. Her robotic style of speech, I thought, actually had a good charm to it, and she was incredibly useful, a hell of a lot more useful than Navi was. I mean, not only could you target every enemy and get information about them, but she also provided advice for you. Yes. If you got stuck, you could get advice on how to go. So she kind of at any time, rather than just like for instance with Midna or Navi, whenever they feel like it, you can go in and Fi will and you know what, the fact that she tells you when your Wii remote batteries are low. Come on, I mean that's good. It's good to let players know. I mean, I know I have an on-screen indicator.
Excuse me, Master. Your Wii remote
and your health is low. I like when she reminds you that your health is low, and then she tells you need to find hearts. Oh wait, no, you're in hero mode. Hearts are not going to appear.
Oh wait, but wait, there's more.
Yeah.
But Groose. Oh, let's talk about Groose for a second, man. Oh, you start out in the game with him just being the biggest dick of all time. He's just that bully in Skyloft that just wants to prove to himself and to everyone else that he's just the best, and he consistently calls Link lazy and a wimp and just worth nothing. And over the course of the game, he discovers, I still to this day think that when Bruce follows Link when he's dropping to the Farron province, and he like catches onto Link's leg.
That's so
and
funny.
That is the best cutscene in the whole game because he's like, "Where am I?"
His face, Link's face.
Ah!
It's great because you're not expecting it at all.
No, and then he's like, "I think I'll call this place
Gooseland. And the Crusader, man, a character he really redeems himself. He's a very dynamic character. You go from hating him to loving him as being like one of the best characters ever, and it shows growth, and it even shows like the reason he was addicted to Link was because he was projecting his own insecurities. And to be fair, he did really legitimately want to rescue Zelda, and he showed that he was willing to do that.
He was in
and
his
he's
own dickish,
at the end he's
dorky kind of way.
No, you're good. We're both so excited.
Yeah, man. He was in his own dickish and dorky kind of way. He loved Zelda, and he wanted to prove it to her in some way. And being a macho jerk was the only way that he really knew how to do it. But you see that throughout the game develop into a more passionate style of like friendship, because he sees how vital and important Link is, and he knows that Link is the only one that can save her, and he finally owns up to it.
And he steps aside. That's what I was gonna say. At the end, he steps aside and says, "You know what?" And he literally says it because I remember finally like finishing off a playthrough that I had. I got to Skykeep, but I hadn't. I was just left there. The last time I picked up the game was like 2 years ago, and I got all the way to Skykeep again, but I didn't. Anyway, I finished it off this time, and then I started replaying the game as well and got up to the mining facility. I'm going off track, but I remember at that end segment. Girahim basically he tells Link, hey, like I understand, like you're the one that's got to save Zelda, and he steps aside and he doesn't, and that is some real character development right there,
Mm-hmm. Going from being a bully and just an oppressing jerk who thinks he's better than everyone else to stepping aside for the person that you've hated on since the beginning, but you have to bite the bullet and know, okay, this man is going to save us all. And I need to accept that. I need to step aside, and I need to wait for this giant tree to just appear out of nowhere with a fruit of life on it.
Yeah. But I guess we're kind of hitting up here. I mean, shit, dude. We're at like almost 45 minutes. Dude, under 30 minutes of my ass.
Go forever. I do want to touch on just one more thing, and I'll be brief with it. But we talked about the Song of the Hero earlier. I love the journey that Link has to take to either get to and speak to or revive the 3 dragons so that he can learn the songs from them. And that is such a crucial and wonderful part of the story.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to make it to the top of the tree in Farron Woods to get to Farron Dragon so that she can tell you to go collect the little music notes. Collect my music notes and bring them to me. And then with the Elden Dragon, you have to go and get a tree or a fruit from the tree of life and or a seedling that these little robots are around, and you have to take it back to the sealed grounds, plant it in the ground in the past, and then come back to the present, get the fruit of life, bring it back to the Elden Dragon. He'll teach you. And then when you go to the Elden province, a volcanic eruption knocks you out of the sky. You get knocked out and abducted by bokoblins, and they take all of your stuff, and you have to sneak around, get all of your stuff back. And when you finally make it to the Elden Dragon, he teaches you the final portion. And now you've learned the Song of the Hero. You can unlock the path to Skykeep. And that is just one of the most monumental. And at first, it feels kind of like a momentum killer, but you realize you're about to face the final trial of the game. And the Silent Realms in themselves are amazing. And one of the hardest parts in the game is the
We didn't even touch on that. But they were great. I love those as stealth segments, They were hard. Like I was freaked out the whole time. I was like, shit, these guys are gonna get me. And I love it whenever like they're coming after you, and you're just running as fast as you possibly can.
Yeah, I used to challenge myself, and I would step in the water on purpose. And I would after I'd pick up a tear, I would purposely like reveal myself, and they would chase me. And I would get tears that were closer together, and I'd leave the farthest one out, all spread about, and I'd go collect one, then step in the water, and I'm like, all right, boys, it's game time. And I would let them all get behind me, and I would time it, and I would just sprint and get away from them. Because there's a little thing that you can do in the game. I'm getting off topic, and I'm almost done here. But right as they're coming up on you to hit you with a sword or like whatever they're about to hit you with, you can start sprinting. and it'll immediately make them miss every single time. Even if you're just running slowly and casually, if
Nice.
they start to swing at you, you can start sprinting and they'll miss you. And that was something I utilized. The silent realms are spectacular. The dungeons in this game are amazing. The 25th anniversary soundtrack that came with the game is something that I have shed multiple tears to.
Oh, and this game was the first to actually use a real orchestra
Yes, sir. The
instead of synthesized. Yeah. Yeah, that was awesome. And the soundtrack is beautiful. I love the Ballad of the Goddess, which, I'm sure is a reverse of Zelda's Lullaby.
Yes, sir.
That is awesome. It's one of my favorite Zelda tracks, actually, the Ballad of the Goddess. I really love it. I used to have, I had that Zelda 25th anniversary, and I think to this day it's still, it got moved into my iTunes library, and it's been in there for years, and now it's in my Apple Music library.
Yeah, I still have the original Legend of Zelda CD. It's in my car.
I don't know where the CD went to. I think I lost it, but nice.
Yeah, it's spectacular. I'll listen to it because the Great Fairy Fountain theme is my favorite track on that CD, minus the opening track, which is kind of like a overview of the entire Zelda series that starts with a Spirit Tracks melody.
Yeah. Oh, that's just another good one.
Yeah, it's so good, man. Spirit Tracks is a great game. I've started playing it, and
Yeah.
The music is fantastic. The controls suck, though. I'm not a huge fan of the DS controls, but no more getting off on topic. Dude, I'm so happy that we finally got to beat up Skyward Sword. It's such a good game. And I know it came out almost 10 years ago, but if you haven't played it, you should. 100%.
It still holds up. It's a fantastic game, and I don't think anyone's going to be missed out. Again, we didn't mind how technically underpowered it was at the time because it was just such a fantastic game. It didn't matter. It was a fucking Zelda game. It didn't need this huge shit that these other games did. And yeah, it's a little bit more linear, but I mean, that never hurt The Last of Us or Uncharted, you know what I mean? This is just happens to be the more linear Zelda game that exists, and I think it excels exactly at what it does.
Mm-hmm. In the real world, it doesn't matter necessarily how the game looks. How it plays, how it makes you feel, and how it impacts your life is the most important part. Because if you're going to take the time, like The Last of Us Part 2, we'll talk about that later on in the season, but The Last of Us Part 2 took me 28 hours just to get through the story, collecting as many collectibles as I could find, and it heavily impacted me. And yeah, a lot of people hate that game, but the way it made me feel and the fact that I enjoyed every second of playing it is everything that I look for in a video game. And Skyward Sword
Nobody
did
can
not
take that away
disappoint.
from you.
Nobody can. And Skyward
Yeah.
Sword has done that for every single time I start a file on Skyward Sword. Whether I'm at work or I'm on the road or I'm doing something in town, I can't wait to get home and dive back into my file. And
Yeah.
that is something that will never change. I love that game. And I'm super happy that we got to dive into it because honestly, we could probably talk for a lot longer on.
God, so many aspects we haven't even touched on, like the dowsing and.
I hate the dowsing, but I hate it
Okay.
so much because I never.
Thankfully, that's not really necessary. You pretty much know where to go,
Yeah, I
the
mean, it's
game
kinda
is
useful
there's
the
a little
first time, but after that,
Yeah.
it's just kind of annoying, and it takes away from the potency of upgrading the Master Sword, just because that's the whole second blessing. You can just douse for 4 more items.
Some of those are more useful though. Like I like being able to douse for like the goddess cubes and what was it? I think rupees and
and
treasure. Hearts they offer in the first set. I remember the very first time that you start to get low on health, Vi will offer you the hearts as a dowsing target.
Oh, true. Big facts. Big facts. Cool.
And gratitude crystals. I think that was the other one that you start dowsing for.
Yeah.
Another great side quest that I liked. The Batro side mission with the gratitude crystals.
Yeah, that was really fun. I think there's 80 of them in the game. I only found all 80 of them once. And then I realized, I really just don't need that big of a wallet. And mainly when I play a Zelda game, my focus is getting all of the hearts and getting all of my items upgraded as much as I can. And everything else, I'll just do that. But yeah, man, it looks like we're probably going to have to wrap this up here.
Yeah, guys. Well, we want to give a very big thank you for listening.
Thank you. Oh,
when you step out of Beetle's air shop.
If you inspect even just one item and then you leave without buying anything, and you're already out the door, so I don't know why he does it, but he fucking drops you. That's so funny every time it happens to me.
I love the noise he makes, man. It's just oh. It's so
Hi.
oh.
Oh, that was perfect.
Okay, so enough of our Beetle impressions, man.
All right. Well, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Give us some feedback. Reach out to us on social media. We are on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, trying to get more and more and more. What's the word? Just trying to do that a lot more. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Huh? Bird's the word. You could listen to Collateral Gaming on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, Pandora, Chill Lover Radio, wherever you get your podcasts, guys. We are going to be coming out with our season premiere on The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. That's what we're kind of running parallel to this episode. This should be the very last episode that's actually under the Season 2 banner. So we'll be opening up with that. Super, super, super excited to talk about it. Like I said, Majora's Mask is my favorite Zelda game, along with Breath of the Wild. You know who holds this game in great regard? Because I just remembered. Majora's Mask is Peanut Butter Gamer's favorite Zelda game as well. But I do believe I think he said Skyward Sword was number 2. Have you ever watched PBG?
I have not, but after you've mentioned that, I'm going to have to go check him out because I love watching people play Zelda. It's always
if
been
you
a
love
huge thing of
Zelda,
mine, and so
yeah,
I go,
listen to
you said
PBG.
Peanut Butter Gamer?
Peanut Butter Gamer, all one word. He's really funny. He loves Zelda. He almost always references it. He does like a Zelda month every year in November. He had cut it on a hiatus, but he brought it back up now. And he's very entertaining. And I've always kind of seen him as like similar to me. I mean, I just like his attitude. You guys, yeah, he's a great YouTuber. But yeah, I guess that's about it. Also, if you enjoy Collateral Gaming, listen to Collateral Cinema, the movie podcast that I'm a part of, along with Bo Maddox and Robert Ortegon. And we just started up our season premiere on that too with Neil Breen's Fateful Findings. It's another so bad it's good movie like The Room. So if you like that, you should check out our podcast and probably watch it. You can find that movie on Pornhub, actually. I'm not joking. That's how we watched it. We watched it on Pornhub.
Oh man, now I'm gonna have like Pornhub in my search history, and if anybody sees it, they're gonna be like, "What you wanting?" I'll be like, "What you watching?" Neil Breen's Fateful Findings.
That's why you use incognito or private browsing, my dog.
Oh, I have ExpressVPN.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Go to
ExpressVPN. Insert the ad here. Okay, we're going off here. Y'all enjoy your days. Stay safe, and we'll see you later.
Yes, sir.
So that being said, I'm Ashley Chancellor.
And I'm Zachary Gio.
We are Collateral Gaming. We are out. Collateral Gaming is an L Company production. All music and game clips are owned by their respective creators and are used for educational purposes only. Please don't sue us. We're poor.